So, good afternoon to all dear viewers and respected Dr. Anitta ma'am, our IQAC coordinator, Garth Mehan sir, Dr. Ashmin ma'am, for your valuable time. Ma'am, welcome you in the ICT Dialogue series. So, before proceeding far further, let's a brief view about ma'am's contribution as well as their brief CV. Ma'am, I've taken their master degree from Tansho University, Japan. After that ma'am, I've covered so many short courses regarding spectroscopic techniques as well as other things and various instruments. Currently, ma'am is working as editorial advisor in Stranger Nature, Pune, India. The basic work is working on a journal publication projects in collaboration with American journal experts and research scale groups. Beside of this, may have published so many articles in various reputed journals, and beside of this, ma'am have already taken so much we can say that honors as well as grants as awards from the various different universities. So, ma'am, you have a so much impressive CV. So kindly proceed your today's lecture. Uh, Now, start please.
Yeah, I'll share my screen now. My screen is visible, right? Okay. So start.
Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So today's topic is publishing in science, all you need to know. So as I'm working in Springer Nature, which is a scientific publishing industry, I'm going to give an overview of the scientific publishing from an industrial point of view. So when we think about the scientific publishing, so we have these questions in mind, like why to publish at all, where to publish, and how to publish. So what I aim through this presentation is start with a lighter tone, and I'll take you deeper into the scientific aspects of publishing. So firstly, what is meant by publishing? It is an activity of sharing knowledge by making information available to the public. And what we deal with here is STM publishing, means science, technology, and medical publishing. So STM publishing simply means collecting the medical knowledge or the knowledge related to science and technology and then share it with the rest of the world. And STM publishing is the lifeline which keeps science moving forward. Then where to publish. So we have mainly two mediums of publishing. First one is journals and second one is books. So here I'll be talking about the journals part. So what I meant by a journal? A journal is simply a collection of scientific articles. So we have come up across numerous journals, right? So they contain scientific articles which are peer reviewed and edited by the editors. And what is meant by a manuscript or a scientific article? It is a typed material or written material which the author submits to publisher. So the basic terms, I'm just taking you through it. And coming to so there are two types of journals. First one is broad scope journals and second one is specific journals. So broad scope journals, from the name itself, these cover a wide range of topics. Like these are general journals. For example, scientific reports, Curious and Discover series and BMC series. So in the BMC portfolio, there are numerous journals and these are all general journals. And they accept a wide range of topics and they are very less specific. And the second category is the specialized journals or niche journals. So these are specialized journals and they cover specific topics. For example, Journal of Antibiotics or Journal of Controlled Release. And they have a specific aims and scope, and those which match their aims and scope, they'll be accepting. So that's why they are called specialized or niche journals. Then who publishes these journals? Of course, they are called publishers. And these are some well-known scientific publishers. So Springer Nature, where I'm working in, then Elsevier is there, Wiley, Sage Publishers, Walters Kluwer, Bentham Science, Emerald Publishing, MDPI, it is the largest open access publisher, then Taylor and Francis, Hindawi, etc. Then I'll be explaining some journal terminology, some common terminologies. Yeah, so this is how a Springer journal looks like. So if you go to the website, you can see the journal URL. Then there is a part where the journal is explaining its aims and scope. And we can see the impact factor, 2-year impact factor and 5-year impact factor. Then how many days or months it will take for this journal to publish an article. Then the publishing model of this journal, if it is an open access, hybrid, or subscription model. I'll be explaining this in the coming slides. Then for other sections, there will be submission guidelines. Here they'll be explaining what are the guidelines you have to go through to submit your article, editing guidelines, formatting guidelines, etc. Then the submission link is present here. Then in the next slide, the journal is having the ISSN. So ISSN is the International Standard Serial Number. So it is a unique number which is used to identify a publication, whether it is a journal, a book, or manuscript. They use the ISSN to uniquely identify a journal. And there are many indexes in which the journal is indexed in. So you can see a lot of indexes. So we'll be covering this in the coming slides. Then the second term is citation. It's the term citation, right? So it simply means if you are taking another author's work or another researcher's work and using it in your work or your manuscript, you are giving credit to that original researcher. So simply it is an act of giving credit to the original author whenever I quote their work in my article. And this is done to avoid plagiarism, because whenever we take others' work, we have to give appropriate credits for them. So that is the idea behind citation. So we use two types of citation, like in the body of the article, we use alphabets or numbers to present the citations. And when the article is ended, at the end of the article, we provide a list of citations, and this is called references or bibliography. So there are different formats on how we have to cite and how we have to write the references. So I'll just brief you through it. The first one is the APA citation or Harvard in-text citation, and second one is the Vancouver citation. So in the APA in-text citation, we use the author's name and the year for the citation. So for example, here this soil salinization is currently considered a global ecological risk. So this idea of this sentence will be taken from this author. So they have given the appropriate credits, like Fu et al. 2019. So this is one way of giving the credits to the author. Whenever the citation is done in author year format, it is called a Harvard citation or APA citation. APA means American Psychological Association citation. And second one is Vancouver citation. Vancouver citation simply means we are using numbers to give the credits, like numbers either in parentheses or in square brackets or in superscripts. So here it is in parentheses, here it is superscript, here it is bracketed superscript, and here is the number given in square brackets. And corresponding to these numbers, we'll write the references and at the end of the article. So if you want to know from which article I have taken this, just go to the references and then see which reference is marked as number 1. So you'll get the original source of this idea of this sentence. Next one is the impact factor. So we are very familiar with this term impact factor, right? So impact factor is a metric to assess the impact of the journal in the scientific community. So when you define it, we tell it like how many number of times the articles of a particular journal have been cited by other authors over 2 years. So whenever we are calculating the impact factor of a journal, we are doing it over 2 years, and we'll see how many articles have been cited by, like how many articles of a journal have been cited by other authors. So in other words, we can tell impact factor to be the citation rate of articles published in a journal over 2 years. So usually the higher impact factor means the articles of a journal are cited more often and the journal is more popular. So for example, an impact factor score of 3, it means that on an average, the articles in the journal were cited 3 times in that year. So suppose if the impact factor of a journal is 10 or 20, so that means that many number of times these articles of the journal have been used by the other authors. So that means the journal is more read, more popular, and more visibility it is having, right? So we always aim for higher impact factor journals because we want more people to read our work and then use our work for building up the next research. That is the idea of the impact factor. It assesses the impact of the journal in the scientific community. And there is this company, this is an analytics company, and they publish journal citation reports. So these reports contain the impact factor of the journal. So recently they have published the 2022 impact factor report. So that will be available in the journal websites. So we call it JCR, Journal Citation Reports, and the analytical company called Clarivate is publishing the impact factor data. Then there are two different types of impact factor, 2-year impact factor and 5-year impact factor. So in 2-year impact factor, what we are looking is how many number of times the journal articles were cited over the past 2 years. So we are taking the data only for 2 years and how many number of times the articles were used in the past 2 years. So that citation rate is called 2-year impact factor. So whenever we tell a factor is 3 or 5, we always refer to a 2-year impact factor. And then there is another impact factor called 5-year impact factor. The same idea of the 2-year impact factor, only the exception is that we are looking for the citation rate over the last 5 years. So you can see the trend, like in the 5 years, how many times the articles have been cited. Why there is a 5-year impact factor is that this indicates the relevance of a journal in a current market. Like if a journal is popular consistently for the last 5 years, the 5-year impact factor will be greater than the 2-year impact factor. So 5-year impact factor is just to assess the relevance of the journal in the present market. Like, is it still relevant or are people still reading the journal? So that is kind of like assessing the influence that journal is having over the community. So usually we use the 2-year impact factor. Then next comes the citation index. Suppose you are publishing an article and you want to know how many times your research article has been cited by other authors. So we have this, we call this citation index. And there is a free source to check the citation index, and that is Google Scholar. And you can see here for this article, here they have written cited by 394. That means 394 other authors have read your manuscript and used the ideas from your manuscript and then cited in theirs. So this is called a citation index. Yeah, and next comes article processing charges. Whenever we publish a manuscript, we might need to pay a fees to the journal, and this fee will depend upon the kind of journal. I want my to be accessible for APC charge. So I'll talk about that in the coming slides. So APC simply determines how accessible you need your article to be. Like if your article should be published as open access or hybrid or subscription kind of journal. So the APC determines that. And the average range of this APC will come around US dollars 1,626. So this is approximately 1,34,000 something INR. So this is the normal charges for publishing an article. And based on the APC, we have three types of journals. So first one is open access journals. Here what happens is, if you are publishing an article in an open access journal, the author needs to pay a fee, and the article will be freely available for everyone to read. So the reader doesn't have to pay anything for that article. So this will be freely available. Anyone in the world with an internet can have access to the open access journals or the article published in open access journal. The only thing is the author has to pay a fee. Well, In subscription journals, what happens is the author doesn't have to pay anything, but the ones who needs to read the article, they need to pay the fees. So that is the idea behind subscription journals. And then there is a third model, which is called hybrid model journals. So what happens is this journal will have both the options. So when I approach a hybrid journal, I can either fee and access, or I have to pay a fee, article subscription based. So we have that option in hybrid model journals. So these classification of journals is purely based on APC, whether you are paying the fee or not. Then more about, so for here we saw the open access journal, the author has to pay a fee to make their article visible to everyone. And then again, there are two types of open access, gold open access and green open access. So what happens in gold open access is the author is paying the article processing charge and the journal is publishing the paper, and immediately everyone can access it. Everyone can see it on the internet. And the copyright is staying with the author itself. And what happens in green open access is that author does not have to pay any kind of fee, right? And the thing is, after publication, the article won't be immediately available for other people, but it will be available after a certain waiting period. And this waiting period is called an embargo period. So if you wait out this embargo period, this article will be freely available for everyone to read, and you do not have to pay any kind of fees. So for authors who cannot afford the APC or who do not have enough funding, they can opt for green open access because this is a method to make their research freely available for everyone without paying any fees. So these are the two types of open access. Yeah, and open access models. So this is just a graphical representation. When you submit, when you write a manuscript and you submit firstly to a journal, that draft is called a preprint. And after the submission, the journal will do the editing, peer reviewing, etc. And then they will send the manuscript back to you. And that manuscript is called postprint. And then you have to give the approval and then send again to the journal. And then they will publish it in their website, either as a PDF or a XML file. And that is called a published version. So there are three kinds of article version: preprint, postprint, and published. So if an author is paying the complete fee and the journal is open access, what happens is the published version, that means the final version of the article will be freely available for everyone. And what happens in green open access, where the author is not paying the fee, but he wants it to be, but he wants the article to be open access after a certain period of time. So he can share only the preprint or the postprint version. He cannot share the final published version of the journal article. So only the preprint and postprint version will be available for everyone to read. So that is a slight difference between gold open access and green open access. Then coming to journal index. The index basically means a list of journals organized by a discipline or a subject or region, or any other factor. So it is simply a list of journals. So why there is a journal index is that the indexing makes it easy for everyone to find journals on a specific topic. Suppose I want to find a journal specifically on medical topics or pharmaceutical topics. So the indexing makes it easier to find the journals in that category. Like instead of searching blankly on the internet, you can rely on the indexes to make your search more specific. Then why the indexing is important is that index journals have high credibility, and if you are publishing your article in an index journal, it increases the visibility of your article. Then the final thing is index journals have higher scientific quality than non-index journals, right? Then, yeah, so these are some indexes: Clarivate Analytics, Google Metrics, then yeah, Scopus is there. So I'll brief about this in the coming slides. And what are the indexing sources? So there are many kinds of indexing sources available. First one is the indexing done by the public body. So for example, PubMed, it is a most common index that we are all familiar of. So PubMed is an index which is maintained by US National Library of Medicine, NLM. NLM maintains this PubMed index. And PubMed is mainly used for biomedical publication, and it is the largest index, or the PubMed is having a largest list of journals which is involved in the biomedical field. And also we have heard about the Medline. Medline is also a part of PubMed. And second kind of indexing is done by analytical companies like Clarivate Analytics. So there are certain companies like Clarivate Analytics. They have their own index. So in this case, their index is called Web of Science. Web of Science is one of the most prevalent and respected indices in academia. So the Web of Science Index, this is the homepage of the Clarivate. So there is a master journal list here. If you click here, you can see the list of journals available, and then you can use this website for searching for the journals, and you can search, like you can match your article with certain journals like that. So this is just a link. You can search in Google, and then you can find find more about it. Web of Science index is again made of 7 indexes. So there are 7 separate indexes in the Web of Science index. So first one is a Science Citation Index Expanded. A Science Citation Index. Now it is known as SCI. Then Social Science Citation Index, Arts and Humanities Citation Index, Emerging Sources, Conference Proceedings, Book Citation, etc. So we have to mainly focus on SCI, Science Citation Index Expanded. And this index, or this list will contain mostly journals which are science and technology journal. You can find it in SCI. If a journal is based on social sciences, you can find it in Social Science Citation Index. And if a journal is based on arts and humanities discipline, you can find it in AHCI. So like that. And and there are 7 indexes in this Web of Science index. Yeah, so first one was indexing sources. We were talking about indexing sources. First one was done by public bodies. That one of the best example is PubMed. Second indexing is done by Clarivate, like analytical companies like Clarivate Analytics. And the best example is Web of Science. And coming to the third index, it is done by publishing companies. For example, Elsevier. Elsevier is having Scopus as their index. And Scopus includes journals in the includes journals in all disciplines, but the majority are focused on science and technology journals. So that's the thing. And so we have previously seen about the impact factor, right? So indexation and impact factor are in fact unrelated. So impact factor is how much impact the journal is having on the scientific community. And how they base the impact factor is that how many times the articles in the journal have been cited over the past 2 years or past 5 years. Indexing is simply a list of journals, and that list is based on either some regions or either disciplines, etc. So these two are unrelated. Many credible journals don't have impact factor, but they are indexed in several well-known indexes. Publishing in an index journal can increase the visibility and credibility of your research. So this is the main reason why we have to publish in an index journal, even though the journal might not have a very high impact factor. And if it is an index journal, your article will be more visible, and your research is considered as a credible research. And again, these are some of the most popular indexes we use in science and medical research as well. Web of Science, Scopus, PubMed, Science Citation Index Expanded. And there's one more, Chinese Academy of Sciences indexing. So this is very specific to the Chinese community, a Chinese research community. And they have another set of journals like CAS Index 2, 3, etc. Yeah. Then we'll come to types of articles. I'm just giving an overview of the article types we come across journal publishing. So first one is original research articles. If you are doing a research and you are reporting the research methods and results, you will be writing the article in an original research format. So that will include introduction, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. So this is the format we're following if you are doing research. In case if you are writing a summary or if you are summarizing the research done by others, that will be a review article. So in that case, you don't have to follow introduction method, research, discussion and conclusion method. So the reviews can be narrative review, like you can narrate the summary, just writing a summary, or you can analyze the researchers and data, and then you can produce a systematic review or a meta-analysis review. And the third one, if you are working in a clinical scenario and you are coming across an interesting case, you can do it as a case report format. So these are the types of articles we come across publishing. And second one is the second part of this presentation is how to select a journal for your manuscript, right? So there are numerous journals in the internet, and it can be very overwhelming, right? So I'm going to introduce some easy tools to help you find a suitable journal for your manuscript. I'm just sharing the names, and you can find these links in the Google. Just do a Google search and you will find the same exact page. So first one is Elsevier Journal Finder. Elsevier is offering this free service. You can just paste your abstract here and then click the find journals. You can adjust the impact factor range, indexing range, and everything. So this is offered by Elsevier company. And from Springer, we have the Springer link. We don't have a pasting an abstract kind of website. Here we have listed in discipline, and you can click on one discipline like biomedicine, and then you'll get a series of journals, and from there you can select the journals. So that is a Springer link. And third one is Wiley Journal Finder. So Wiley is also providing a similar kind of service. You can paste your manuscript title and abstract here, and then click the find journals, find button here, and then you'll get a list of journals. So these might not be exactly correct, but you have to read carefully the aims and scope of the journal, and you should see if the article is matching that aims and scope. And fourth one is Jane. We call it Jane in the short form, journal or author name estimator. So here you have to paste your abstract and then click the find journals button, and then you'll get a list of journals here also. So these are all freely available online. Then Taylor says Journal Finder. Again, pasting the abstract here, click the reveal journals button, and then you get a set of journals which is matching for the manuscript. Then finally, it is the journal guide by AJE and Research Square Group. So AJE means this American Journal Experts, and yeah, so AJE Research Square Group have this website, and here also you can do the manuscript title and manuscript abstract, and then paste, and then click the search button. You'll get a set of journals here also. So these are the different tools you can use to find a journal for your manuscript, right? Then how to choose your target journal. So whenever you have an article in your hand and you are confused how to search a suitable journal for your for publishing the manuscript. So these are the 5 simple steps which I suggest you can do this. So firstly, you have to decide your impact factor range, which is the range you want, your article to be published in. And secondly, you to see the aims and scope of the journal, like in which field the journal is focusing on, and what are the specific aims and scope of that journal? Do they have any recommendation, or do they emphasize on certain fields? So most of the journal list this very clearly in their aims and scope section. And third one is article type. So like almost all the journals will accept original research articles, and some journals might or might not accept review articles, case report, etc. So this will vary according to the journal. And then fourth one is find out if the journal has similar articles. So if you are publishing a topic, like trying to publish on a specific topic, search in the journal, like if there are any similar articles published in the past. Then fourth one is target audience. Who do you want to read your research? Like, are you aiming it for the clinicians, or are you aiming it for a basic research person? So you have to decide what kind of audience should read your research, and then publish in a journal which is targeting that kind of audience. And then fifth one, like as we told before, the index journals. What kind of indexing you are aiming for? Either you can go for PubMed indexing, Web of Science, Scopus, or all the 3. The third part is publication process. I'll quickly take you through the publication process and how it is happening. Sorry. Yeah. So the very first step for publication in the publication process is starting with the manuscript preparation. Firstly, write the first draft of your manuscript, proofread it, and then look for the basic grammatical errors and all. And then you have to decide what kind of article you should write. Like if you are reporting the research for an original research article, if you want to summarize summarize the researches done by other people, you should go for a review article, and that too you can decide: do you want a systematic review? Do you want a meta-analysis review? Some kind of journals will accept systematic analysis plus meta-analysis papers as a original research. So it depends on the journal guidelines, and you can find it in the website. Right. So writing the first draft and what kind of article or what type of article do you want to write. So that is the decision process in the first step, manuscript preparation. And secondly, you have prepared it, and then you need to search in which journal do you want to publish it. So as we discussed, you can go for journal finder tools. You can shortlist the journals from those site websites. And whichever journal you're choosing, make sure you are reading the aims and scope very thoroughly. And you can check for very similar articles which the journal have been published in the past. So that is a very reliable method which I use. So if the journal has published the similar articles as yours, the chances are that the journal will accept your article. The chances are more. The accepting chances are more. So that's why we go for the similar article search. So you have selected the journal, and third one is manuscript submission. So here you need to note that you have to submit your article to one journal at a time. And if rejected, then submit to another journal. So this is a good practice we are following in publishing. Don't submit to 3-4 journals at one time, and then, don't do like that. You have to submit to one journal at a time. And then if it is getting rejected, then you go for the second journal in your list. The fourth one is the editorial assessment. So in the first 3 steps is the first 3 steps has to be done by you. Write the manuscript, select the journal, and then submit it. And then editorial assessment, from here, the editorial board or the editorial part is starting from this part. So the editor will check if your manuscript is matching with the journal scope. If it is matching, he will say yes, and he'll redirect your paper or your article to the next further process. And if your manuscript is not matching with the journal scope, he will have to reject, and then he'll rejection email and all. So that acceptance or rejection part will be happening here. So if okay, the paper is accepted and sent for further steps. So what are the further steps? Further step is peer review. So when the editor is receiving a paper, he will invite other people or other researchers, and then he will ask them to read and analyze your article. So these people, these experts will be reading your research article. They will be carefully going through the data, whatever you have written, and then they will be analyzing your article. They will give comments. They will give criticism, and based on that criticism, the editors will see if they have to accept or reject the paper, right? So the peer reviewers, they check for relevance, novelty, and errors, and they provide constructive criticism to editors and authors. And those journals who have the peer review system, we call them as peer-reviewed journals or refereed journals. So referee process is another name for a peer review, right? So if you are saying a journal is a peer-reviewed journal or a refereed journal, that means if you are submitting your article to that journal, that your article will be going through a series of expert hands, right? And they will analyze your article, and then they will give you comments and then feedbacks and all. And last one is that a journal may be a scholarly journal, but may not be a peer-reviewed journal. So there are thousands of journals, right? So not all the journals have the peer review system. So whichever journals are having the peer review system, they will mention in their website And there are some other journals that do not have any peer review. They just accept the article and then go through the do the proofreading and then publish the article. Yeah. Then types of peer review. So there is a single blind, double blind, triple blind peer review. In single blind peer review, what happens is the reviewers don't know who the author is. So the identity of the author is hidden from the reviewers, right? And double blind peer review, both the authors and the reviewers don't know each other. Like the author doesn't know who is reviewing my paper, and the reviewer doesn't know who is the author of the paper who he is reviewing. That is called double blind peer review. And triple blind peer review is that the identities of the authors and editors are hidden from the reviewers. So reviewers don't know who is the editor of this journal or who is the author of this manuscript, and vice versa. That is called triple blind peer review. And then there is another peer review called open peer review. What happens is the identities of authors and reviewers are revealed, and the review comments are made public. So the authors and reviewers know each other. Like the author will know who is reviewing paper, and the reviewer will know who is the author of this paper. And even the review comments, all the criticism, feedback, everything, they are made public. That is called open peer review. And then there is a transferable peer review, right? So here the peer reviews of a manuscript are transferred from one journal to another within the same publishing group. So we saw many publishing groups in the beginning, right? So example, in case of a Springer Nature company, they have thousands of journals. So if you're submitting to one of the journals and that journal is doing a peer review, and unfortunately that manuscript got rejected, and then they have the transfer system. That means within the Springer Nature company, they'll look for other journals in which you can publish a article. So what happens is with transfer article, all peer review comments which were done in the previous journal, everything will be transferred to the next journal. So then this will reduce the publication time. So when the article is going to the new journal, they don't have to go through the peer reviewing step again. And this is a great step to reduce the publication speed time. So that is called transferable peer review. Then there is a third-party peer review, an independent third party, rather than internal reviewers or academic colleagues perform the peer review. So the peer review is not done by academic or individuals, rather than they will give it to third party. Then there is another thing called post-publication peer review. So this occurs after a research paper has been published, and researchers, they provide feedback. Right? So your article is published, and then based on the published article, the researchers and other people will read, and then they'll give you the feedback. So this will happen in post-publication. So mainly we just had to focus on single blind, double blind, triple blind peer review. And peer review, this blinding process is there because to avoid the biasing in the peer review, right? So if I'm reviewing someone's paper and I know who the author is, and that if that author is very well established author, I might refuse to give some comments, right? I cannot be very much genuine. So if that identity is hidden, I can blindly give any comments or any criticism which I want. So that will increase the integrity of the research. So the blinding process is there. So both the authors and reviewers are comfortable giving reviews, giving their comments, right? And this will improve the scientific research area. And based on the peer review reports, these reports will be prepared by the reviewers, and the reports will be going back to the editor. And then based on that reports, he'll again decide whether to accept or revise. So this is an acceptance stage. And if the article is accepted, it will go into the production. So what happens in production is the manuscript is accepted and there are copy editors. So what they do is they check the manuscripts for grammar, punctuation, style, and overall flow, clarity, and the English language flow. So sometimes the author may not be native English people. So what happens is it may not be much clear for the readers. So they work on the overall flow and clarity area. Like when you read the manuscript, you have to at least understand what the research is on, right? So these things happen in the production side. And there is language editing. So American journal experts, they provide one of the best language editing services. And also they check if the words are used correctly and terminology, verification of statistics, whatever data, whatever images you are giving, are they genuine or not, or is it made up? So all these things they are checking in the production. And finally, what happens is each journal is having their own formatting style, their own format, their own fonts, like in which font they want to publish in. So all these formatting they'll apply in the production stage. Then finally publication. So after all the edits and revisions, the final version of the article is sent to the author, and the author will read the manuscript again and then give his approval, and the manuscript is published online or offline. So this is an overview of what happens in publication process. And yeah, finally the post-publication services. What happens here is your manuscript is published, and whenever anyone else is reading your article and then using your article for a reference, they will do the citation, right? So you will get the citations, like how many people are reading, or how many, like what is the reach of my research. You can get that overview through the citation alerts. And authors can also see the impact or reach of their article. Yeah, so this with this the publication process overview is over. And then as I discussed before, I'll just brief about the article versions. So firstly, author's original or preprint version. So I explained this while we were discussing about the open access, right? I'll just go through this again. So yeah, preprint version it simply means the first draft writing. So that is or the original version. So that will be the original, unedited, pure, raw manuscript. And then second one is accepted manuscript. Accepted will be peer-reviewed, revised, and all the edits will be done. And this is accepted for publication. And then the third kind of version is final published version. That simply means peer-reviewed and formatted articles. So after formatting, it becomes ready for publication, right? So that is called final published version. And the last version is version of record. So final publication published version, which includes any post-publication corrections. So this is the final published article. And after publishing, if you feel that there are some errors, you can edit the manuscript again. And that edited one, that means that updated manuscript will be called version of record. So this is the most important, like version of record is very important, like because it is updated, right? Whatever mistakes you feel, you can update it. So that is the difference between this. Then yeah, so we discussed as preprint, the preprint as author's original, right? The first draft of the manuscript. And then I'm going to discuss something about the preprints. So what happens is when you are deciding to publish, you are doing some research and you have got a really great research finding and you want to make them available to everyone, right? So imagine if you are a researcher and you are going through a traditional publication process. You have to write the manuscript, you have to collect the data, statistics, you have to present it in a format with the journalist accepting. And then you have to wait for the editor's decision to accept or reject. Again, the manuscript will go for peer review. And then again, you have to correct it. You know, it takes sometimes months or years for for getting your article published. So if you can't wait that much time, and if you feel that this research should be readily available to the public, right? So if you feel like that, you can do one thing. You can just write the manuscript draft, your pure draft, and then post it in some kind of database. And that is called a preprint server. So scientists post their unpublished article version in an online database called preprint server. And these articles are not peer reviewed. You are just writing the article or the draft, and then you are posting it in the preprint server. And once posted, not be removed. And then these are some examples for preprint server. So preprint servers are online archives or repositories. So you can call them databases. You can post your manuscript without going through the publication process, right? And these manuscripts, no, like if you want to publish, just go for the publication. No one else is going to check if it is correct or wrong, like that. So that is the idea behind preprint services. And why we go for preprint is traditional publishing time is very lengthy. And in case of some emergency, like example in COVID, you found some kind of vaccine for the COVID, and you need to publish that research immediately, because if you're publishing it after 1 year, then obviously there is no use. Like public won't be public won't find it much useful, right? So in kind of such medical emergencies, so you can go for the preprints. So this is one example where preprints can be useful. Research Square is the biggest preprint platform, and then there is bioRxiv, the preprint server for biology, medRxiv, preprint server for health sciences, then psycharchive, etc. So there are in the internet you can find these online archives where they post only preprints, right? Yeah. And then, so this is a continuation of this. So post-publication services. Yeah, your article is published, and then you get the citation alerts and all. And then what happens after your article is published? So this is just one step which I didn't explain previously. So what happens is the journals will publish this deposit these articles in PubMed Central or any other databases, right? So this is a screenshot of Brain and Behavior Journal. So what I have told is Brain and Behavior Journal will deposit all articles, like whichever articles they are publishing, they will deposit it in the PubMed Central. And once your article is deposited, they will make it searchable on PubMed as soon as possible. And yeah, so this is one step which the journals do when they publish their articles. They make sure that these articles will go into the PubMed or Web of Science. For this to happen, the journal should be indexed in PubMed. So in the beginning, we talked about indexing, right? That means if the journal is indexed in PubMed and this Brain and Behavior is publishing an article, that article will be deposited in the PubMed Central. And you can search in this database, like whichever articles you want. Yeah, and we'll talk about databases here. So why do we need a database? So research databases are organized and searchable collection of information. And so whenever we need something, we go for Google search, right? So what's the disadvantage of Google is that Google will search for results across the internet, including websites, while research databases typically include scholarly journal articles and newspapers. Yeah, so if you want a genuine information about some medical aspect or anything, you just go and search in the databases instead of Google, right? So, and why is that? Why it is like that? Because Google will give you the search results across the internet, whether it is fake or we don't like. It will give the entire search results, and it will search for the results across the internet. So you don't know which is genuine or not. But if you search in a database, like in a PubMed or Google Scholar, if you're typing something and you're searching, you will get the information and you will get the source from where the information is published, right? So that is why we use databases. And they are generally more reliable, and they include citations for any information they use from other sources. So whatever things they're claiming in that paper, you will get the sources from where they got the information. Right. So this is much better than doing a Google search. So that's why databases exist. Some of the most common databases. Google Scholar is the most common database. Scopus is there, PubMed, Web of Science, right? And DOAJ, Science Direct. So these are some examples for the databases. So whenever you search, whenever you get the search results from a database, you can see the source from where the information is presented, and you can go to the research paper and then you can verify. All these things you cannot do in a simple Google search, right? In a Google search, you will get lots of websites and blogs. You don't know if the information is correct or wrong, right? So this is why we are putting the articles in the database. And this is why indexing is important, right? So imagine you are publishing in a journal and that journal is indexed in PubMed. So that means if your article is published, the journal will ensure that your article is searchable and discoverable in the PubMed. So if in the PubMed you are putting some keywords, your article will be coming up, right? So that is a purpose of a database, to make your article discoverable and everyone. So that's why we tell to go for an index journal, so that your article is deposited in all these databases and whoever wants to access your article, they can search and find out your article, right? So all this indexing databases and all, everything is linked. Yeah, we saw this, then common databases. And then what happens when a journal rejects your paper? So yeah, we don't want our article to be rejected by the journal, right? But it happens whenever, if we are not careful about aims and scope, or if the journal is saturated with the papers and they don't want to receive any more articles. So in such cases, journal might reject your paper. So in that case, you should not get disheartened. Instead, you should recheck the aims and scope of the journal and see what was wrong, and go for the second journal and then read carefully the aims and scope and then submit it again. And in some cases, like in Springer Nature journals, they offer a transfer service to other journals. So for example, if you are submitting your article to a Springer Nature journal and the journal is rejecting your paper, so we have a transfer desk service. So what happens is that will be handled by the transfer desk team, and they will analyze your paper and they will suggest 5 journals in which your paper can be published. So this happens within the publishing companies. Elsevier is having, Wiley is having. So all the publishing companies usually have this kind of service. So, and this transfer desk service is free. In Springer Nature, it is a free transfer service. Yeah, so these are which you should keep in mind when a journal is rejecting your paper. Yeah, so with this, we ended to the next part, terminologies that research authors should be familiar with. In a research and into the publishing field. So there are some terms which you should be familiar with. First one is ORCID ID. Simply means Open Researcher and Contributor ID. ORCID is a non-profit organization, firstly. And what this ID means, it is a unique identification number assigned to each researcher. So usually we identify people by names, right? In research field, researchers are identified using ORCID ID. So it is just like an Aadhaar card to an Indian citizen. Like it is an identification for each given to each researcher. And whatever things you are doing in your research life, like you are publishing an article, you are applying for a grant and you received a grant, and you are doing a peer review for another journal, and whatever you are doing related to your research, all these will be linked to your ORCID ID. Like ORCID ID keeps this data. And here you can see the example of an ORCID ID here at the bottom part. Then, yeah, ensures that the ORCID ID ensures that your research outputs are not confused with those of other researchers with similar names. Suppose you and another researcher is having a similar name. So your research output should not be confused, right? So even though your names are similar, your IDs will be different. So that is the sole purpose of ORCID ID, and your ORCID ID belongs to you and not to the institution that you work. So it is a personal research ID. And there is an H index. This is another term which we come across publishing. So what we told about the impact factor, right? So impact factor basically means how much impact a journal is having in the scientific community. So likewise, how much impact a person's or a researcher's work is having on a scientific community. That is called H index, right? So it is simply a metric to measure the impact of a researcher. For measuring the impact of a journal, we use impact factor. For measuring the impact of a researcher, we use H index. So just to keep in mind. Yeah. And the next part is ethics in publishing. So, in the publishing industry, there are lots of malpractices and they are still happening. So we need to be aware of the ethics part in the publishing. Almost all the journals have in their home, if you see the homepage, and if you click the the instruction to authors links, they have a series of instructions for the ethics, for following the ethics in publishing. So I'll just give you an overview. Yeah, so first one, the malpractice which happens in the publishing or scientific or the research field is scientific misconduct. So there are 3 kinds of scientific misconduct. First one is plagiarism. If you are using someone else's works and you are not giving appropriate credit to the original author, it's plagiarism. If you are giving the credits to the author, it is not plagiarized. But if you are taking someone else's idea and then you're not giving the credit. So that is plagiarism. And if we detect a significant amount of plagiarism, your article can be rejected in the first stage itself, in the first editorial publication process, right? So they'll analyze your article for plagiarism, and then if it is you are this happened. So maybe you did not do the research, but you are writing a paper that I did all the research. So this is called a fabrication. And third one is falsification. Here you did the research, but you did not get the favorable result. But in the paper you are writing, you got all the favorable results, right? You're manipulating the results. So this is called falsification. So all these are serious scientific misconduct practices, right? So yeah. And next one is simultaneous or duplicate submission. So previously we told if you are submitting your article to a journal, you have to submit the article to one journal at a time. So if you are submitting your article to three, 4, 5 journals at a time, it is a simultaneous or duplicate submission. So this can be detected by the publishing companies. For example, in Springer Nature journals, if you are submitting 4 Springer Nature journals at a time, we will get the tickets and we can see how many journals you have submitted. So this is a serious case at the first stage. And then there's multiple all publication. You publish your article in a journal and you are trying to publishing the same article again in another journal. So that is a duplicate publication or redundant publication. So it really should not be done because it confuses the scientists. So if your research is published more than once and they're seeing it in 2 different journals, so it will cause a confusion and should not be done. And next one is image manipulation. So sometimes we take, most of the times we take images for publishing the article, right? For include article. So what happens is you can you can edit your images, meaning you can increase the contrast or highlights like that, but you cannot introduce any new features. Like if a mark was not there, you cannot introduce it, and then or you cannot remove any kind of markings in the images. So all this will be considered as manipulation. If you're introducing something new, or if you are removing, it is called image manipulation. Or if in case if you're increasing the brightness, image clarity, increasing the contrast, all these are acceptable. Then finally, authorship issues. So if you are not including someone who contributed to your research, that is an authorship issue. And if you are including someone who did not contribute to your research, that is again an authorship issue. So most of the journals have very strict authorship rules. So it is, if you go to any journal, they have a authorship rules or guidelines they are having. And if you have time, you can just go through them. Yeah, next session is predatory journals. So what happens is these journals market themselves as genuine or original journals. They do not have any kind of peer review system or any kind of review board system. And what happens is they are asking for fees, and then in turn they'll publish whatever paper you're giving, whether it is or anything, they'll publish that. And so this is what predatory journal does, and why the predatory journals are happening. You know the importance of publishing in academic. So if you're applying for a post, or if you're applying for a grant, they'll look at the publication. So how many articles you have published. So based on that, they give you promotion, or they accept your grants and all. So this is because of this publish or perish scenario in academia, the predatory journals have been come to the scene. Just to be published and so that is why journals are in the scenario, and you should not you should be careful not to publish in a predatory journal. Yeah, so how do you know your journal is not predatory, right? So there are 2 important online sources. First one is Bell's list of potential predatory publishers. So if you just type Bell's list of predatory journals, you will get a website, and here they have listed all the publishers and all the journals which are fake. Then second one is Chinese Academy of Sciences early warning journal list. So this list is issued by the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and almost every year they update the list. And in the warning list, they'll include some journals, and like it's better if you are not publishing those journals. So both days, if you do a simple Google search, you will get the list of these predatory journals. So this is how we recognize the journal is predatory or not. And most of the publishers, the well-known publishers, right, Springer Nature, Elsevier, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, Dental Science, these won't come under the predatory publishers because these are genuine journals and usually don't come under. But there are specific publishers go through the list. Yeah, and next concept is paper mills. So paper mills are profit-oriented, unofficial, and potentially illegal organizations. What they do is they produce and sell fraudulent manuscripts. Right. So they fabricate paper and then they publish the research paper. And those research papers seem to be genuine research. That's called a paper mill concept. So next slide is which are the organizations who regulate the ethics related issues. So whichever rules we are having in the scientific publishing industry put forward by and related and related to having the scientific publishing industry. One of the famous one is Committee on Publication. So almost all journals will have guidelines. They will ask the authors to read the guidelines. Most of the terms which we discussed in the previous slide, like fabrication, falsification, etc., these all are formulated by COPE guidelines. They promote research and the Committee on Publication Ethics, they have developed internationally recognized ethical standards to ensure what they are ensuring, the quality of a scholarly literature. So if no one is regulating the scientific publishing industry, and there are lots of fake kind of manuscripts, and there are lots of fabricated data, you know what happens, right? The aim of publication is to keep science moving forward. So what happens if all the researchers publish are fake, or if the data is fabricated? So that will affect the kind of researchers happening. That will affect the moving forward concept of science. Right? These organizations, the research, the integrity of the research, and they will ensure that whatever it is whatever articles are getting published, they are properly peer reviewed and they are following they are keeping a certain level of quality. That is important for keeping science forward, and this will be the basis of further researches. And there are two more ethics-related organizations: World Association of Medical Editors and International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. So, but most of the journals will follow COPE guidelines, and then in some cases we can find ICG, CMGE, and WAM guidelines. Yeah. Then just a few slides on what's trending in publishing now. So in the scientific publishing industry, what's trending? The first one is the idea of open access. So we have discussed the idea of open access in the previous slide, right? Author is paying a fee, and the benefit is that anyone in the world can read the research. They can access the research, right? So right now, Springer Nature is trying to convert all of its journals into open access, so that whatever you are publishing in a Springer Nature journal, that will be readily available for all the researchers and all the people. So this is a trending in the scientific publishing industry now, open access and open science like that. Then second one is DORA, which is the short form for Declaration on Research Assessment. So previously we talked about data analytics company, right? Publishing a journal citation report, and they are having the impact factor. So all the journals, they are being judged by impact factor. So some publishers feel that the impact factor is not very genuine criteria for assessing the quality of a journal. So for that, because of that idea, a group of editors and publishers proposed DORA. And when this happened, when in the San Francisco on December 2012. So the aim of this DORA is fair assessment of research and responsible author practices. So they are having a certain set of guidelines, and based on guidelines, they are trying to assess the quality of the journals rather than the impact factor. What are the metrics that you can find to assess a journal? This DORA based on the idea of that. And the next one, very popular, artificial intelligence in publishing. So with the rise of ChatGPT, the reliability or authenticity of the research publishing is being a very difficult topic right now. So this screenshot is from an Nature journal. So what they have told about this ChatGPT or AI is that large language models like LLMs, they do not currently satisfy all criteria. So whenever you are using a ChatGPT for editing your manuscript or for writing parts of your manuscript, you have to give the credits, and it's up to the journal if they will accept or not. So many journals have very different views on accepting the authorship of this artificial intelligence, especially ChatGPT. So this is the another aspect. Yeah. And coming to the last slide, what are the career prospects in science publishing? So if someone who is interested in research, interested in writing, and interested in editing, you can go for a career in scientific publishing. And these are some screenshots which I took from various websites, and you can see which career prospects, like in Nature, junior advisor, junior advisor post. This was a post where I first, and then now I'm working. I made it your like first recommendation project. And you can go for Elsevier, for Clarivate. They have the companies. They have a graduate. If you're informed, publishing industry, editorial assistant, then I editorial access it in Google, type company's names, and then just go into your Google search, and you'll get the open positions. Associate scientific editor in medical science, that is by Elsevier. Some journals they post the editor in vacancies. Like for example, this Journal of Neurodevelopmental Disorders, they are looking for an editor chief because someone else is retiring, and then they want a new person for editor in chief position. They actually have a scientific and medical writing position. These are some of the career aspects in science publishing. So with this, my presentation is over. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I was trying to give an overview of the publishing industry. I hope it was useful to you. Thank you.
So, Anita ma'am, you did a very excellent job in very precise manner. You have explained all type of things which was possible regarding the plagiarism, regarding the quality specs, regarding the impact factor, what is regarding the what they are basically. Here some questions from the audience. Ma'am, as you have already showed the video in your presentation, there are some jobs regarding editing. Students are asking that is there any kind of options for the part-time editing job? For example, someone is working with some other institutes, but they have a good writing or editing skills. Is it possible? Is there any kind of feasibility?
Regarding part-time, because most of the advertisements they have given, you have seen the full-time beneath job. Not sure about part-time, but yeah, there are full-time. I guess practice, but not sure about full-time job. The part-time job.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, next question is what about the salaries?
Salary range for a fresher, like So from 4 p.m. Lost my connection.
I think, ma'am, there was
Yeah.
no connection, no?
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So from where, which part you lost me? Yeah, the salary,
Ma'am,
right? So I can see for a fresher they'll offer. Uh, am I audible now?
yes, ma'am, you're audible now.